Good morning. We will pay attention to consumable stores on hand at the end of the financial year. When consumable stores, for instance, packing materials, stationery, cleaning materials, refreshments, are treated as expenses, the expense account is debited every time when we buy the consumable stores. That means if we buy packing material, we will debit packing material, credit the bank. Debit stationery, creditors control. When there are any of these consumable stores on hand at the end of the accounting period, the expense account must be reduced because you can only show in the income statement the expense for the current year. So if you bought more than you used in this year, it means that you must reduce this expense and you will therefore credit the consumable stores, packing material, cleaning material, whatever, and you will create a temporary current asset, consumable stores on hand. As soon as you see the word on hand, it indicates to you that that is a balance sheet account, so that is an asset. If the word is only consumable stores, then it's an expense. And this asset will be created with the value of the consumable stores on hand that is available at the end of the year, because you will transfer this consumable stores to the next financial year and you will use it in the following year. So in the following year, this consumable stores must be treated as an expense. Consumable stores on hand, together with the inventories, is shown in the balance sheet as a current asset. So it's an asset to me that I already bought consumable stores in this year that will only be used in the following year. Even if all the consumables purchased during the year are debited in the expense account, only the part that you've actually used can be recognized as expense. So you can't show more in the income statement as expense as that part that you've used. So if you bought more, you have to reduce the expense, and the part that was not used will be recognized as an asset. Debit consumable stores on hand to create this asset, and you will credit packing material to reduce your expense account, and if we reduce expense account, the owner's equity will increase. The first day of the next financial year, we have to do a reverse entry at the beginning of the year so that this amount that was created as an asset can be taken away, and we debited consumable stores asset, and then we will credit that asset so that we can cancel it. And the packing material was credited. Now we will debit the packing material to indicate that there's already expense paid for the following year. At the end of the financial year, the total of packing material amounted to 680. The inventory count indicated that unused packing material amounted to 120 rand. So it means that there's 120 that we did not use in the current year. Therefore, we will create an asset to remove it out of our packing material account. So we decrease the expense for packing material and we increase the asset with the packing material that will be used for the following year. You will transfer to your profit and loss account the actual amount that was used. We bought 680. We've taken out the 120 that was not used in the current year. Therefore, the amount that will go to profit and loss will be 560. The first day of the next financial year, we will reverse this entry. So we credited packing material at the end of the year to decrease the expense. Now we will debit packing material to show that there's already expense paid for the following year. we created an asset at the end of the year that was a temporary asset, so we have to cancel it, and therefore we will credit consumable stores on hand so that we don't have that asset anymore. In the general ledger, we will have a total for packing material for 680 Rand. We will credit the packing material with the amount that was not used in the current year and transfer it to the asset account that we create. And then we can show what was the actual expense for the year, and that is the amount that we will transfer to the profit and loss account, and that is the expense that will reduce our profits. On the first day of the next financial year, I will credit this consumable stores on hand to close the asset, and I will debit packing material with the 120 to indicate that we've already paid the expense. Now, if we look at this packing material account, what did we actually do? We said we bought 680, what we used was 560, so we created a balance. The balance is the one that you actually do an adjustment for to create an asset. And there we bring the balance down on the first day of the next financial year. It is possible to find the consumable stores account in the nominal account section and the consumable stores on hand account in the balance sheet section. The entity can decide to put all their consumable stores. So instead of opening a separate account for packing material, stationery, petrol, oil, they open one account for consumable stores and they show all the expenses for consumable stores in this one account. So this account is then their expense account. As soon as you see consumable stores on hand, that is the asset account. So that means that is the asset that was left over at the end of the year. In the statement of financial position, this consumable stores on hand will appear as a current asset together with the inventories. When consumable stores are available at the end of the year, the expense account must be credited to decrease the expense, and so that the consumable stores that we actually used during the year is shown as an expense in the income statement. An asset, consumable stores on hand, is created, and that will be disclosed as an asset in the balance sheet. On the first day of the following financial year, we will reverse this entry and we will indicate that the expense was already paid and we will cancel the temporary asset.